there was a mission that was meant to be a 3-day mission that ended up 5 days. Talk me through that situation.
That was hectic. That was probably the most chaotic 5 days of my life. We'd only just got there. So they reverse season to us, of course, right? They're in the Northern Hemisphere. So, mid-year is hot in Afghanistan. And, December, January is cold and winter and snow issues. So we rotated in mid-2010. And our first job was at a town, a village down south in Shawalikot called Gombad. So we were taking the whole Delta Company
A
in
little
there.
ominous.
Yeah, I know. So we were taking, 70, 80 shooters into this valley. And there'd been enough intelligence and information coming out that, there was enough guys down there to warrant the whole force going in, which was great for us. So everybody got tested. Everybody had only been there like a week or two. So we all went in. We went in, the cover of night at like 3 a.m. with, a dozen helicopters. And we get out and we take over our target compound. Everyone's got a compound or a hillside or a valley that they're going to stay in for the next 3 days. And mine was a compound with the whole platoon. So essentially it's kind of 30 guys in and out of this compound for the next 3 days, which was the plan. And we'd just send patrols out. You would send, 5-man team here, 5-man team there. And it was hot, like so hot. So water was an issue. So you would take in, 10, 12, 15 litres for yourself, but you'd go through that patrolling out, probing the enemy and probing the village throughout the day. So by the end of the 3 days, we'd been in a number of gunfights. But what had happened was the valley had come over with a certain dust that would come down, right? So helicopters, you would think, as long as I can see a target, they would land there. So for us to be extracted, I thought was a no-brainer. They can see us, we can see them. But down this big, massive valley, there was just enough dust, and I think they needed a mile, they would call it. So the helicopters wouldn't come in if they couldn't see a mile worth of visibility. So 3 days turned into 4, and we're getting low on ammunition because all teams were getting into contact. We were all in gunfights with the enemy, and we'd get shot at every afternoon from a village about, a kilometre away.
So when you say that you're probing villages, what does that mean?
I mean, we'd send out patrols, we'd send out teams in different directions. We would monitor. We had lots of Predators and Reapers, which were your unmanned aerial vehicles, which could collect on data and individuals. But because it's hot, it's hard to get a thermal signature, even throughout the night. So with those assets, we could do infrared. We could pick out where the bad guys were. And then we'd send out a team the next day to intercept those guys. So it was target rich down there. There was no drug labs or anything back then. There were cells of bad guys that were hitting up. But by day 4, the dust had settled in and along this valley, and we couldn't get extracted. So day 4 turned into day 5, and now we're down to pretty much zero water, zero food. Radio batteries were becoming an issue. So I'd get everybody in my team, for instance, to turn off their radios so we could just use mine, and I'd use everybody's battery so I could communicate. So by the time day 5 rolled around, it was very critical that we got out that day at some point. So we kind of, we maneuvered and we worked out that the dust was better on this day than the next day. So we moved to a village that's kind of overlooked a part of the valley and knew that we were going to get extracted there at like 7 in the morning. So we got there about 4 in the morning. We hid kind of in the rocks. And then at about, 6:30, we could hear the helicopters coming in. So they sent a bunch of attack helicopters first. So we had plenty of Apaches to suppress the enemy. Because the Predators and the Reapers had picked up that the enemy was coming in. They knew we were going at some point, and they worked out today, because we'd all moved, that it was going to happen. So we had one platoon about a kilometre away. We had my platoon here, we were in like a 300-meter circle. We could hear the helicopters coming up the valley. They had a number of big Chinooks, the twin-bladed helicopters behind that all the troops, all of us would get in. And what we also had at that point was like a big 6-wheel motorbike that carried extra ammunition, extra rockets, extra grenades, you name it, that was on this big vehicle, 6-wheeled vehicle that I had on the next rotation. So this thing malfunctioned and wouldn't drive because we would just drive it on the back of the helicopter. And then, 20 guys on, and the next helicopter, 20 guys, next helicopter, 20 guys, and we'd all fly away. It was great. But we couldn't get this thing started, and it had a lot of valuable equipment on it with rockets and grenades and stuff. So the helicopters come in, they land, all the enemies shooting at us, they're shooting at the helicopters. My helicopter had 18 bullet holes in it. So all the guys get on. We can't get the bike to start, so we ran off the back. We're trying to problem solve this thing in a couple of seconds so we can drive it on. We couldn't do it. So we end up taking off. Troy, who you've spoken to previously, and I've heard both his podcasts, he got blown over and he hit his head. So luckily our helicopters kind of stayed on the deck, stayed on the ground for a little bit until he come to. So he's talking to the Preds and the Reapers. He's talking to the Apaches. He's convincing the Apache they need to blow up the motorbike that we're leaving behind. So it was a bit of a shit fight, but it was a controlled shit fight. Troy finally gets on. He's talking to the attack helicopter, convinces them to put a missile and some 30 mil explosive tip round cannon into the motorbike. So they blow that up, and we all fly away. We'd had a number of new guys that had come into Delta Company just prior to that trip. So there's probably 6 or 7 new guys. This was their first operation. So by the time we get back to TK, they're like, holy shit, is that what happens every time you go out? And we're like, nah, actually, that was pretty bad. Normally they aren't that bad.
What was Troy like to work with? Because I only know him as I've never been in the military, so I know him in a very different context to you. So I've seen the sweet Troy, and although he's not someone that I'd ever want to cross, I'm interested to know what he was like serving with.
He was funny. So that was his first gig with us. He'd come across and we all got new JTACs. So that's a joint terminal attack controller. So he's got a lot going on. Like those guys, a JTAC within your platoon, you've got one JTAC, and then you've got other guys who are JTAC qualified who can talk to aircraft and drop bombs and get extracted and talk to medevac Black Hawks, for instance. So he's got a lot of shit going on. He's got 2 or 3 radios. He's got a little satellite antenna radio thing that he can do on the run in case we're in a firefight. He can point it at a satellite and get satellite link. So he's very busy, at those key times when we're being inserted or we're being extracted. He's talking to 6 or 7 helicopters. He's trying to run with the rest of us and not get shot at. He's shooting his own weapon, and he's controlling all the air. So he's controlling the jets if we've got F-15s or F-18s. On another day in 2012, he's controlling a medevac helicopter, which is a Black Hawk and an Apache, Apache coming in to pick up our wounded guys, as well as our extraction aircraft packet, which is another set of Americans and another set of 6 helicopters. So he's definitely got his ass hanging out most of the time, talking to people on radios and trying to deconflict where the teams are so they can drop bombs or fire their rockets, in support of us. So he's got to be on point, and he was great. He was good at it.
I think he undersells his intelligence a lot of the time in regards to what it took to do that job. So Anyway, it's just interested. In terms of 2012, you're a platoon sergeant at that stage, and you're back in Afghanistan working normally, not doing any close protection stuff. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. Another combat tour, 6-month regular combat tour.
How many combat tours did you end up doing?
I did 3 6-monthers. I did a couple of PSDs, and I did a 4-month long PSD in Kabul in 2011.
So is Kabul Iraq?
No, Kabul was just across the border there from Pakistan, which is their capital. So that's the one that they withdrew. The Americans withdrew, a couple of years ago
Oh,
now, I
yeah.
guess. Yeah, that shit's
I was
fun.
going to ask you about that. Yeah. What made you want to get out? Because you got out not long after that last rotation. What made you want to get out?
So for me, I was going higher up the chain. So I would have become a warrant officer at some point. So that meant, like I spoke previously about doing those promotion courses.
Yeah.
They get worse the further you go up the chain. Like, they are hideous things to do. Like learning how to march and how to teach marching, learning military law, because they want to charge everybody for being late at work or spitting on the ground or whatever it is, right? The army gets a hard on for charging people, for doing menial, infractions, but they love it. So you had to learn a lot. And for me, I just didn't enjoy that stuff. And I knew everything was becoming digitized on the computer. So for me, even running a range, like I said before, right, it was a week of this to run a 3 hour.
That's two-finger typing, everybody that's listening.
Practice, I know. And I hated the drop boxes and the admin and, words, spreadsheets, PDFs, as you know. So I knew I was going to do a lot more of that. And the war was over for us in 2013. So for us, there was no more Afghan trips. We didn't know Iraq was coming up. And even so, it wasn't kinetic for us. We weren't outside the wire, taking it to the bad guys. So for me, it was all promotion courses and being in the office and organizing the activities for the junior soldiers to do. And I think I was quite selfish, to be honest. Like, I was in the army for me, right? I wasn't a lifer. I wasn't going to stay in there for 40 years. I was in there to tick my boxes, to tick my adrenaline, to do cool stuff. And once I wasn't doing that, I was always going to leave